Did you know that while Europe was in the Dark Ages, a city in West Africa had one of the world's largest universities? Much of what we think we know about history is incomplete, a picture carefully curated to exclude certain stories. Today, we're diving into the history books. Or rather, the parts that were intentionally left out. We're asking the question, what school never taught you? For many, that phrase evokes a yearning for a more complete telling of African history, a history that goes far beyond the narratives of slavery and colonization. It's a story of vibrant civilizations, groundbreaking innovations, and intellectual powerhouses that thrived long before European contact. The standard curriculum often presents a distorted view of global history, one that centers Europe and minimizes the contributions of Africa and its diaspora. This isn't just an oversight, it's a deliberate act with far-reaching consequences. Let's start with Timbuktu. Often depicted as a remote trading post, Timbuktu was, in reality, a major intellectual center. While Europe was grappling with the fragmented aftermath of the Roman Empire, Timbuktu boasted a thriving university, Sankore University, attracting scholars from across Africa and the Middle East. Its libraries housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, covering topics from astronomy and mathematics to law and medicine. These weren't just dusty old scrolls, they were actively used in teaching and research, pushing the boundaries of knowledge. To imagine Timbuktu solely as a trading hub is to ignore its profound intellectual legacy, a legacy that challenges the pervasive stereotype of a pre-colonial Africa lacking formal institutions of learning. But the erasure goes beyond scholarship. Consider the history of ironworking in West Africa. Archaeological evidence suggests that iron technologies were being developed in the region as early as the 8th century BC, possibly even earlier. This discovery places African metallurgy among the oldest in the world, predating or coinciding with similar developments in Europe and Asia. This challenges the narrative of technological advancement flowing solely from east to west. It reveals a complex tapestry of innovation where Africa played a crucial, often overlooked, role. The systematic omission of African achievement is not accidental. During the colonial era, education systems were strategically designed to privilege European languages, values, and history. In South Africa, for instance, the curriculum heavily emphasized European history, literature, and cultural norms, while neglecting indigenous African knowledge systems. This deliberate narrowing of instruction served to reinforce colonial power structures, instilling a sense of inferiority in the colonized population and undermining their cultural identity. The goal was to create a workforce compliant with colonial needs, not to foster critical thinking or celebrate African heritage. Even in the United States, the history of African Americans has been subject to systematic distortion and erasure. Textbooks used in Southern public schools well into the 1970s almost completely omitted the achievements and contributions of African Americans. Major events and figures were glossed over or ignored entirely, perpetuating a biased and incomplete narrative of American history. This erasure wasn't limited to the distant past. It extended to the civil rights movement and the ongoing struggle for racial equality, leaving generations of students with a fundamentally flawed understanding of American society. The impact of this curricular omission is profound. If students are not exposed to the rich tapestry of African history, they inherit a distorted worldview in which Europe appears as the default center of civilization. This skewed perspective shapes public memory, influencing everything from political discourse to cultural attitudes. It reinforces harmful stereotypes and perpetuates a sense of European superiority. Furthermore, excluding African history limits the understanding of African American identity. As Dr. Dana Rami Berry argues, a comprehensive understanding of African history is essential for grasping the global roots of slavery and the diaspora, as well as the resilience and cultural richness of the African American community. The consequences of colonial curriculum policies continue to resonate today. By replacing local knowledge systems with European-centered frameworks, colonial education helped entrench cultural hierarchies and political control. This legacy shapes debates over school curricula across Africa, where the push for decolonization of education remains a central concern. The language of instruction is another key issue. The continued use of European languages in education often marginalizes indigenous languages and knowledge systems, perpetuating a cycle of cultural dominance. The recovery of African history is not just an academic exercise, it's a vital step towards cultural confidence and informed policy debates. It empowers communities to reclaim their heritage and challenge dominant narratives. This reclamation extends to museums, archives, monuments, and school syllabi, particularly in post-colonial states seeking curriculum reform. It also strengthens the modern diaspora identity by providing access to the historical context of slavery, resistance, and transatlantic connections. When African history is omitted, descendants of the diaspora lose a crucial part of their own story. The controversy surrounding this topic is not about a single disputed date or event. It's about a systemic pattern of omission, a consistent tendency to treat African history as peripheral in education systems that center Europe and the United States. This omission is compounded by the historical struggle over textbook content, where Black achievements and injustices were often deliberately left out of mainstream materials. Even the design of colonial curricula was a form of suppression, privileging European knowledge and excluding African intellectual traditions. While some popular claims about African antiquity may be overstated or simplified, the evidence for Timbuktu as a scholarly center, West African ironworking, and the documented exclusion of African and Black history from curricula is overwhelming. These are just a few examples of the rich and complex history that is often missing from our textbooks. By acknowledging and addressing these omissions, we can create a more accurate and inclusive understanding of the world, one that celebrates the contributions of all cultures and civilizations. The story of Africa is the story of humanity, and it deserves to be told in its entirety. So, what will you do with this newfound knowledge? How can we, as individuals and as a society, ensure that future generations learn a more complete and accurate history? This is a conversation that needs to happen, and it starts with asking the right questions.